Hi guys, welcome back. It's Wednesday, and today is Classic Rock. Today we're going to look at a fellow, and I know when he first came out, they were having a tough time deciding how to pigeonhole him. It was the late 1970s, Elvis Costello was out, and when this fellow came on the scene, they tried to market him as another new wave artist. Now, a lot of the new wave artists, they were signed to record labels in England. This fellow signed to A&M, Herb Alpert's label. And again, I think they had a hard time figuring out how they were going to pigeonhole him, but he put out a couple of really good albums in those first years while they were working that out. One of my favorites being Look Sharp. Yes, we're talking about Joe Jackson. 1979, the album came out, and you can see with the artwork, yes, we're trying to kind of make him look like, he's kind of got that Sid Vicious look to me there, a little bit of that angry young man and the whole look he puts on. But great album, some real good music on here. A couple of hits. Is she really going out with him? Look Sharp, One More Time. Again, when I listen to it, this whole album stands up really well. Joe Jackson playing piano. We got Gary Stanford guitar, Graham Mabey on bass, and Dave Houghton on drums. And again, all songs written and arranged by Joe Jackson. So here's another guy that's just not a performer, but also a writer, producer, getting music the way he wanted it. Now, I saw Joe Jackson, I'm going to say it was a year or two ago. It was before the pandemic hit. So it was either last year, 2019 probably. And I'd seen him live. I hadn't seen him in a long time. So you got to figure from 1979 to 2019, that's quite a stretch. And basically, he's still doing great. He's had a string of albums out. His last album, unfortunately, when I heard it in concert, I didn't appreciate it as much as when I actually heard it, online after. But he's a great performer. Some of the same people still with him in the band, and to have him and just 3 or 4 people out there singing, he's playing the smaller venues, but he really brought it. And like I said, they sold out in no time. Now, the second album of Joe Jackson's, followed it up, was still very similar to the first, Joe Jackson, I'm the Man. And again, smaller group, just Joe and his players, but Joe writing the material, producing it. On Your Radio, Kind of Cute, Different for Girls, the band wore blue shirts, Don't Want to Be Like That, Amateur Hour. A lot of those you may not recognize from airplay. I mean, when I think back on the first 2 albums, probably Is She Really Going Out With Him is the one that got the most airplay. But when you listen to the albums, the whole album stands up really well. It's not like we had one hit and then just some filler, which used to happen back in the 60s. But in this case, great album overall. And again, if you give it a chance, these first 2 albums really, while they don't define what Joe Jackson is all about, they were really entertaining, and they did fit the times of the late 70s, early 80s when New Wave was coming along. Now, Joe Jackson put out another album called Beat Crazy, and then he followed it up with something completely different. And this one threw people for a bit of a loop. I know we had some people that had seen this album. When I saw Joe Jackson the first time, it was when Night and Day had come out. And we had some older people in the audience at that time. I wasn't that old. But they really weren't familiar with a lot of his work. They maybe had heard one album, and I'm thinking a lot of them, it was this one. Joe Jackson, Jump and Jive. They were from the era that probably that swing sound was more what they were looking for in a concert than what we'd seen. And again, this was quite a change from what Joe Jackson was doing. Songs by Cab Calloway, a lot of tribute songs to Louis Jordan, who we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Give you some idea, we're looking at Jumpin' with Symphony Sid, Jack You Dead, Is You Is or Is You Ain't My Baby, We the Cat Shall Help Ya, a San Francisco Fan, 5 Guys Named Mo, Jump and Jive. Tuxedo Junction, How Long Must I Wait for You? Now, he's augmented the band with a few other players, obviously, because he's doing a swing album. Pete Thomas, alto sax, Raul Olivier on trumpet, Nick Weldon on piano, Joe still doing vibes. Got tenor sax of Dave Batelli, Graham Mabey still there on bass, and Larry Tolfree on drums. But again, a tribute album to the music of people like Louis Jordan and Cab Calloway. Quite a change from that new wave sound. And then after this, Joe kind of went off and really developed his own sound. And we'll look at some of his later albums, maybe in a future show. But he did do one thing that was a bit of a rarity as well. Joe Jackson got paid to do a soundtrack. And the soundtrack was for the movie called Mike's Murder, starring Deborah Winger. Now, he kind of had the same problem Tom Scott had with the Aykroyd Belushi movie called Neighbors, where Tom Scott had come in, they did all the music. When the producers were looking at it, they weren't really happy with the movie. What's the first thing they did? Call somebody else in to do the music. Whether that made enough of a difference, I don't think the movie did that well with it. Even on this, same thing happened to Joe. Joe Jackson had done all the music, and by the time the movie comes out, John Barry, who was well known for his soundtrack work, was credited as the main orchestrator. Joe Jackson's in there with some incidental music. This album covers the music he did for the actual movie. And again, it's not really that available. If you get a chance, it's worth checking it out just to see what he did as a soundtrack. But I consider these one of my Joe Jackson rarity albums. So, 1979, New Wave, whole brand new style of music coming out. And one of the proponents, Joe Jackson. Check out Get Sharp, I'm the Man, and for a little bit of fun and going back to what we looked at a couple of weeks ago when we were looking at Louis Jordan, and even last week with Shocks Johnson and the Jive Bombers, why not take a look at Joe Jackson with a little jump and jive to see what he brought to the party. Okay, that's it for today, our tribute to Joe Jackson. We'll see you on Friday. And again, just a reminder, we're looking at different musical formats, how we've listened to music over the years. So we should have some fun with that. So we'll see you on Friday. Everybody take care. See you then.